All right, back now to talk about the first chapter of Gravity's Rainbow. Again, these are, I guess I'm going to call them addendums according to what I titled the first one, so I'll stick with that until I realize it's dumb. But this is the addendum to Part 1, Chapter 1, which I titled at the time Last Stop The Wasteland in reference to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Obviously, because this first section, I guess the dream, not the entirety of the chapter, but Pirate Prentice's dream, reminds me heavily of the scenery and the depictions of a dying Earth and post World War II Earth. World War II, I mean post World War One Earth, given that is when the poem was written and what it was largely about. So I had that vision in mind while writing this, and I also recall mentioning David Bowie's song "Subterraneans," which is a instrumental song and a very ominous song that pairs perfectly with the poem in the chapter that I'm going to be talking about right here. So to start, we have the infamous first line, which, if you haven't read it, which I'm assuming you have because you're paying me for this, is a screaming comes across the sky. It has happened before, but there is nothing to compare it to now. And I talked a little bit about that last time, I think in reference to the rainbow of the Gravity's Rainbow title, being that the rainbow is not an arc, is not a parabola. That is what we see it as in our own sensorial perception, but it is not actually this parabola. Instead, it's a circle. It's a perfect circle that goes, well, through the earth. It arises out of the earth at one end and goes back into the earth at the other end, making a full extra parabola below the earth. Also, sorry if you can hear stuff in the background, but my house doesn't have the thickest walls, so you might be able to hear stuff outside. But anyway, this parabola also, I mean, this circle also reminds me a little bit of Against the Day in terms of the discussion of their hollow earth ideas. And that's something I will get into when I write about Against the Day, which I was going to do next, but I'm probably going to do Lot 49 after Mason and Dixon, and then I'll be getting into Against the Day. But there's definitely something there about this, like, hidden aspects of our history and the circularity of our history, and I'd have to read it again to be really sure what I'm talking about, but there's definitely something there in that metaphor. But, anyways, so this screaming comes across the sky, and it has happened before, right? It has arisen out of the ground before, and it has fallen into the ground to not be seen again for a while. And that is why it hasn't been seen for a while, is because it's still within this earth, is what I'm trying to say. It's still a part of this earth. It's like the Nazis after World War II, de-werewolfifying, that's a crazy word I just made up, but turning into their human selves from their previous werewolf selves, their previous wolf selves, because they're still werewolves, they're still Nazis, they're just now hidden. And so the rocket has been hidden back into the ground, the Cold War. Remember that Gravity's Rainbow is taking place in the 40s, but it's a commentary upon the 1960s, which is largely part of the Cold War. And so this rocket has penetrated the ground again and is now in hiding, but it's doing a reverse parabola, which is just a parabola, but below the x axis, and eventually it will reoccur. And here we see it reoccurring because this dream that Pirate Prentice is having at the beginning here is not just a is not a vision of World War II. It's a vision of the end of the world. It's an apocalyptic scene in which everything is ending. An apocalypse. Yes, I said that already. So this vision that he's having is this rocket reemerging, but not just the rocket reemerging, not just something that has happened before, but now there's nothing to compare it to because every iteration of this rocket coming back is going to be a more powerful version of itself, is going to be something that's so much more technologically advanced and perfected that there is no comparison anymore. I doubt you could have made any comparison to the nuke before the nuke was dropped, right? Hiroshima, Nagasaki, we had never seen anything like that. And so there was no comparison. It was one of the most horrifying events in human history, if not the most horrifying event in human history. And there was no comparison. And still, I'm saying that we're not talking about World War II. No, in the book, when Pirate is having this dream, the nuke had not been dropped yet. I can't remember exactly what years this is going to be taking place at this point of the story, but it's near the end of the war. I think the war is over on the European front, but not the Pacific front. And so, what we're seeing at the beginning here is the end of the world, or I guess what is the end of the world for most people, the preterite, because after that we see we see things begin to break down. I guess before I talk about the preterite, what I'm going to talk about is the next line, where it's talking about the evacuation proceeding, but it's all theater. So a lot of this book has to do with theater. A lot of this book has to do with the fake set design, the fake costumes, the fake cast, the fake positions, the people holding up the lights, the people who need to be there in the background building stuff, building the set designers is what I'm trying to say. The people like the director who are writing the stories, or at least not writing the stories, but producing these stories and changing them up. All of this is theater, and what is falling apart but theater, this fake world that's been built up around us that we've been told is the only world. We've been told that we work for people who, I guess, spend money to build this world up. We work for CEOs of companies like Amazon who allow us to get packages at any moment of the day. We work in public education, and we're told that the means by which we're teaching 5 days a week for 7.5 hours a day, uh, with short passing periods and 30-minute lunches, and all these standards are the perfect way to do such a thing. And back in the 70s, I'm sure when Thomas Pynchon was writing this, there was a little bit of a difference in who we were working for, be it CEOs or public education or anything else. But nonetheless, none of this is inherently real. None of this is inherently a perfect system. This is all just the system that's been built up around us that we've been told is the best system, that basically allows the people who, as we're going to talk about in a second, who fly away from this apocalypse, they're the ones who've told us this is the best system because guess who it benefits? Not us, but them. And when things begin to break down, because this, you can say labor strikes could stop this type of thing, but we'll always go back to work, unfortunately. And I hope in the current moment we're living in, there's something of the sort, a labor strike that does not lead us to go back to uh, what we've always been doing. But that's where my pessimism unfortunately comes in. But nonetheless, there is a moment, there is something that could happen that would take this entire facade, take this entire stage, the set design, the roles that we play, the lights, all of that. It would bring it down indefinitely, right? And you can see that when it's talking about there's no lights inside the cars, no lights anywhere. Above him, lift girders old as an iron queen, and glass somewhere far above that would let the light of day through. There are no more lights. The set is falling apart. The set is breaking. There's a crashing. The only light that there might be is if there's a skylight and the light of day comes through again. It's the natural light that remains. But that's all that remains because this set is destroyed. This is the world in a post-nuclear war. I'm sure you could make the argument that it is just a war, that it is just a war that has gone so awry that the world is ending and there are not enough people left, there are not enough cities left, there are not enough facilities left to maintain everything. But I mean, I think it is a post nuclear war, and if you finish the book, you'll see why I might think that. But what happens when this set design falls apart and there is no set, there is no play, there is no director to tell us where to go and what our roles are? The cars don't work, the lights don't work, and the only light is natural light. Well, the elite, them, capital T them, escape on their private jets, as it says in the novel. Only the nearer faces are visible at all, and at that only as half silvered images in a viewfinder, green stained VIP faces, remembered behind bulletproof windows, speeding through the city. Now, I always viewed this as taking off in their private jets, right? These VIPs taking off in their private jets to whatever island they may have, whatever island they may be safe upon, where they can continue to indulge in the same pleasures that they've always indulged in the last moments of the earth. But now that I'm rereading it, it sounds more like they're escaping in some other way, but that's irrelevant because they are escaping. And as they escape, we have no function. We have not built up a world in which we've organized enough to grow food and to distribute food and to have clean water. And in a post-nuclear war, is there clean food? Is there clean water? Is there arable soil? I don't know. I don't think so. The sun is likely blocked out as well. And so now we're being herded off on these train cars that start from city centers and go deeper, deeper into districts that, as it says, ruinous secret cities of poor, places whose names he has never heard. And this reminds me heavily of the Crime of Lot 49, also, with Oedipimas looking over the city of San Narciso as a circuit board, where there are predestined places where one spot will lead to and which will never lead to another spot that we don't want someone who lives in that first spot to ever see. And so what we're seeing is finally, well, we're allowed to see the most decrepit spots. And we're just being brought there at this point, herded onto these cars, the most preterite of preterite. It's not just the upper middle class, right? It is the poorest of the poor who are herded here into these big hotel buildings where they're shuffled off into rooms and await death because there's no use for these people anymore. The elite aren't going to exploit them. They're probably going to take a few with them to exploit them, as we can again see, like I was saying, with a supposed island that they might have where they'll live out the rest of their days. They need some people to take care of them and to, well, to take care of them, yes. But they don't need us all anymore. We are going to be shuffled off into these hotel rooms, and that is where, like I said, we'll await death. The facade is broken and we don't have those roles anymore. Again, no one tells us where to go, who to be, who to play as. It's all, at this point, over. And at the end, all you're going to hear is a voice in your ear. You'll realize what you've been working for your entire life has been theater. You'll realize that there was a real world outside of this theater, and it has always existed. And if one were willing to fight their way out of said theater, if one were willing to crawl out of Plato's cave, discover truth, and come back in to let everybody else know what could really be out there, then we would be okay. The theater would still exist. I'm sure we would have to create our own new theater, but it could be a theater in which is directed or written by us rather than capital T, them. And instead, now we hear this voice in our ears saying, from the book again, you didn't really believe you'd be saved. Come, we all know who we are by now. No one was ever going to take the trouble to save you, old fellow. And that's the point, is we've ended up here in this hotel room in a post-nuclear world as they live off their final days, their final fantasies, wherever they might so choose. And we had the hope that they would save us. And I don't think that many of you believe that they is just someone like, yeah, I guess I'll name names like Jeffrey Epstein or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or any of the billionaires, Elon Musk. I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about anybody who is complicit with them. That could be someone as high up as Donald Trump. It could be someone who works below him in the Senate. It could be a Republican. It could be a Democrat. It could be any of these figures who have been recently named in these files. It could be Benjamin Netanyahu. It can be anybody at that level of government, at that level of power, at that level of wealth. They would not save us. And yet, Republicans, and I'm talking about citizens now, put their faith in these billionaires, and Democrats put their faith in the same people who maintain the system as it's always been, and no one is willing to get outside of their comfort zone. No one is willing to stop contributing to a system. No one is willing to organize. Instead, we put faith that if we continue this system, but push the path a little in the direction that we want it to go every single year, every single 4 years, nonetheless, then eventually something will happen. We can strike for one day. We can have one general strike in one city in the US and tell all of the other cities to go on a general strike tomorrow, which, let me tell you, if you're telling me, like a teacher, to go on strike tomorrow, that ain't gonna happen. I would love to do that, but that's virtually impossible. And so we're willing to put ourselves in the least amount of discomfort, which is what it leads to here, the light coming in. And that light is no longer the light of the day, the light, the skylight that is the only natural light remaining in this world now that the lights of the theater have been broken down. No, that is no longer the sun. That is a screaming that holds across the sky. A screaming that holds across the sky. It's the final light. It's the last light that we'll see. And that screaming that comes across the sky or that holds across the sky, we won't hear it. That will be our death. That will be the final nuke, the final missile coming to end it for good. And that's where Pirate wakes up. What a fucked up dream that is. But it's real. And who is Pirate? Well, this is Captain Jeffrey Pirate Prentice, living in a London flat. He works for and it doesn't say this yet, but he works for the SIS, which is the Secret Intelligence Service. And if you haven't heard of that, that is basically MI6 before it was called MI6. That's what it was called during World War II. If you don't know what MI6 is, it's the UK, the UK version of the CIA. And it's, I guess, this SIS to MI6 analog is similar to America's OSS, Office of Strategic Services, versus the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. Again, the OSS is what the US was calling the CIA, or I guess it's just the same thing, but it's what it was called during World War II. So the SIS is who Captain Jeffrey Pirate Prentice works for, and he is living in this flat with Teddy Bloat. Teddy Bloat is another member of this organization, of this SIS, and they're living together, waking up from a drunken stupor. And we learn a little bit about this London flat. Upon the roof is a thick layer of very hardy topsoil in which Pirate grows his banana plantation. His bananery is what he calls it, or what Thomas Pynchon calls it. And this is going to call to mind the United Fruit Company, today known as Chiquita, and all of its horrors in Latin America that have been brought about. But I'm not going to talk about that just yet, because that's going to be more involved in next chapter in 1.2. However, there are other things that are grown upon this in this soil on top of the roof, on top of the flat as well, and it specifically mentions Osby Field, who is another character that we'll meet later, who is involved with these two men, Pirate and Teddy Bloat. How he grows these hallucinogens. I believe later, and don't quote me on this, but I do believe he grows aminata. Is that how you say it? It's a type of mushroom. Aminata. I don't remember. The Aminata muscara. I don't know why I'm trying to hypothesize and do guesswork here. You probably know what I'm talking about, but there's a tie-in between these things that these people are growing, these products that typically would not be grown here, but that we have come to love. Again, this is a big commentary on Mason and Dixon and this globalization of produce and of everything, really. Being able to get coffee in this place, being able to get tea leaves over here where they've never been grown before, being able to make a burger which requires 7 different pieces of produce or agriculture or animal husbandry, and all of these things going all over across the globe, now being brought right here in America to be put together in a perfect order so we can have our burger. And so that's kind of what this is commenting on right now, with all these things being able to be grown on top of Pirate Prentice's flat. That is in reference to the bananas, but then there's these hallucinogens as well. And so this massive desire to consume, this massive desire to feel good whenever you want, also has a massive tie-in to hallucinogens in the 1960s, and then especially into the 70s, in which Pynchon was writing a lot of Gravity's Rainbow as well, even though it was probably mostly the 60s. But there was the rise of hallucinogens, be it LSD or magic mushrooms or whatever, but obviously most prominently LSD. And this desire to consume, this desire to be one with the earth and to be your own person and to do whatever you want and to feel good whenever you want, however you want, that was being introduced by the government into, the hippie culture and into much of the 1960s cultural phenomena. So what we're seeing here is this tie-in between consumerism and, drug abuse and not mind control, because LSD does not actually lead to any form of mind control, but to a suppression of the desire to, as we were talking about in Pirate's Dream, to fight back or to create your own new theater. It will subjugate you and placate you and make you comfortable and complacent with the way the world is going, because now you have access to your bananas, which you once wouldn't have had, and now you have access to a way to feel perfect and good and happy. And so Pirate rises on a spiral staircase after taking a piss to go pick some bananas for his infamous banana breakfasts, the scene of which we'll see next chapter. And upon this rooftop, he sees something rising far in the distance, leaving a vapor trail behind it. And initially thinking it's an airplane because that's what he's used to seeing, what he actually realizes is this is I think he calls it the new secret German rocket bomb. And what that is the V 2 rocket. It's the first sight of the V 2 rocket that we will see in this novel. And the V 2 rocket is what this novel largely has to do with, the search for a very specific V 2 rocket. This V 2 rocket is the most perfect rocket that we've seen yet. It's the most controllable one, kind of like we've talked about, controlling gravity, perfecting the trajectory and speed and direction of the rocket up until Brenchless. This was the epitome of what a rocket could do up to that time. And it's also going to have some very, very distinct parallels to the nuclear bomb, that being the next iteration, even though at this point in history, the nuclear bomb was almost done, and if not almost done, probably done and only have been tested yet. And so that will be the next iteration of a perfect bomb, although that won't be the most perfect secret German rocket bomb. That'll be the most perfect secret American rocket bomb. And Pirate sees this traveling up as he's on top of his rooftop. And I realized I made a not dumb because I just didn't know it, but I said maybe the V 2 rocket can travel a mile or a few miles or whatever. No, here it says it can travel about 200 miles, and I don't know if that's fully accurate. I think that's just what Pirate thinks at this point, but it can travel a lot further than I thought, and I knew it would be further, but 200 miles is quite impressive for nearly a century ago. And here it is. It says it right here. Brenchless. That would be fuel cut off, end of burning. And after that, hangs in the sky. Already the rocket, gone pure ballistic, has risen higher. And so that's what we're seeing. Brenchless is the cut off of the fuel, and it continues to rise, gone pure ballistic. It's just rising because of its momentum, eventually to fall. And up here, he sees this rocket falling, which, well, I guess he sees it rising, and he thinks, there's mail. We'll see what that means later. But more importantly, right now, is that he has this feeling of dread. He's picking these bananas, and he realizes that it could be him that it lands upon, that it'll hit him and he'll see it or he'll feel it, if he can feel it, if it lasts that long enough, before he'll even hear it. Because again, the speed of sound won't catch up to it till later. It's traveling so fast. And he has this feeling of dread, maybe having just had a certain dream, that perhaps what he's working for, perhaps the agency he's working for, perhaps the system that he's working for, or the fact that what he's working for is the exact same organization and body of governments that is furthering this war and that is bringing on more wars like this. Maybe something's wrong here. Maybe this is the thing he's scared of, the fact that this bomb can drop on anybody, that it can bring us to our last winter. Maybe he's feeling some sort of complicity in all of this. And we can clearly see in the lines of the novel that he is feeling something. He feels pain for the people who might die from whatever this rocket or wherever this rocket is going to land. He feels pain for the people in his dream, and he distracts himself by picking bananas and smoking a cigarette and walking back down the corkscrew ladder, bearing the bananas, bearing this idea that he can still have, because of the war and because of the theater and the system, he could have whatever he wants whenever. And I think this is an important thing that we see. We see that he works for this organization and therefore is complicit objectively, and there's no doubt about that, just because we like Pirate and Pirate is a good character, a good person. Just because we like him does not mean he does not hold complicity. But it's important to notice that and to notice his understanding that something is wrong, because that comes to fruition later. Much later. Much too late, unfortunately. But it does come to fruition later. And so, with that, I'm going to end this episode. Hope this extra addendum was worthwhile. I'll see you next time for part 1, chapter 2. I know I did part 1, chapter 2 as 2 parts last time. The first part focusing on the banana breakfast sequence, and the second part focusing on Pirates fantasy management with the adenoid and all that. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I might keep it as a separate episode so I can link one to each at the bottom, or maybe I'll just. Actually, I guess I will have to do that since they're already separate, but nonetheless, I'll see you for part 1, chapter 2 next time. Whenever that next time might be, I won't say next week. But until then, thank you.